Man, oh man, today we got a supersized episode coming your way featuring a song so epic, it began as 24 separate songs. They're songs the band didn't know what to do with. In fact, they called them Nothing Parts 1 through 24. Well, when this band did figure it out, what they had on their hands, this song was so monumental, it changed the course of their entire career and rock music altogether. Jumpstarting, one of the best-selling albums ever, one of the most iconic. But the intrigue, it doesn't end there. This song also has an unexpected connection to oceanographer Jacques Cousteau. Also a 2,000-year-old volcanic blast and an anti-Woodstock concert played to an empty stadium? Man, it's an incredible story coming up next. One of the greatest bands ever on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you ever got frustrated and took the stickers off the Rubik's Cube to solve it, you'll dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. I did that a few times. I know some other people that did as well. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the big white button and click the bell so you always know when our good stuff comes out. Also, you got to go to professorofrock.com. Vote for best band. We got brackets. We're doing like a March Madness and all of that. We're going to try to seed the brackets first. So go check it out. We got the Beach Boys versus Kansas this week. Make your pick. Also other great stuff there. So today we're returning to one of my favorite bands of all time, Pink Floyd. Told a lot of Pink Floyd stories on this channel from all across your catalog, really. A lot of emphasis on their period between The Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall. We also hit on their 80s and 90s materials at different points. We talked band origins going back to the 60s. But this time around, I want to get into an album that we've yet to cover. It's a classic. Their 1971 LP, Meddle. I'm sure you already know where I'm going to go with this one. We're going to be talking about Pink Floyd's extended masterpiece, Echoes, because it's a great song and an even more incredible story behind it. Let's get into it. The creation of Pink Floyd's sixth studio album, Meddle, that marked a pivotal moment in the band's career. At this point, the foursome of Roger Waters, David Gilmour, Nick Mason, and Rick Wright were still adjusting to life without founder Syd Barrett. The former Floyd frontman left the band in 1968, or had been pushed out, for mental health issues. We've covered how that all went down before, so I'm not going to get into it. But Barrett's departure cut the band to the core. And it became an introspective turning point for Pink Floyd's evolution. And it was here on Meddle where Pink Floyd's signature sound began to coalesce. The record is regarded by many as the group's first magnum opus and the first properly mature Floyd album, and I agree with that. So 3 months after the release of Atom Heart Mother, Pink Floyd was back to work in the studio. In the preceding weeks, they'd been out on tour. They've hit the US and Europe, a schedule that would continue throughout 1971. Meddle's session would begin in January of 71 and extend through September for a total of 9 months. But before Pink Floyd would lock down their new identity and their direction, they had more growing pains to get through. When they turned up at Abbey Road for their first recording session, they were all but empty-handed. No one in the band had written anything new. They didn't have anything to record. So without anything there, they began tinkering and they developed an unusual concept for the record. I think I've mentioned this once before briefly. But their idea was to make an album where kitchen utensils and tools and random objects were going to be used for, instead of traditional instruments. According to engineer John Leckie, he said they spent days and days and days working on what people now call the Household Objects album. They were making chords up from the tapping of beer bottles and tearing newspaper to get a rhythm and letting off an aerosol can to get a hi-hat sound. The trouble was, it just didn't seem to be going anywhere. Now, this idea was abandoned after a week and consigned to the rubbish library. The Household Objects project would never see the light of day, though the band is reported to have recorded roughly 20 minutes of music. Against their better judgment, the band would temporarily resurrect the idea a couple of years later during the creation of Wish You Were Here, and they got the same result. It just didn't work. Very interesting, though. Only Pink Floyd. Okay, but switching gears, during the Meddle sessions, Pink Floyd would soon find their footing. Addressing the press before the album's release, Roger Waters, never one to mince words, proclaimed that he was bored with most of Pink Floyd's catalog. His vision and lyricism were more grounded in the so-called real world than Barrett's whimsical approach. Waters was determined to purge Floyd's identity of the space rock label and Barrett's thematic influences. So Meddle was released in the US on October 30th, 1971, and it came out in the UK a few days later on November 5th, where it climbed to number 3. The final track listing for Meddle contained just 6 tracks. On side 1, you had 5, One of These Days, A Pillow of Winds, Fearless, one of my favorite tracks. Saint-Tropez and Seamus. That's the dog who's outside. And then side 2, it had just one song, Echoes. Along with Shine On You Crazy Diamond parts 1 through 9 and Atom Heart Mother Sweet, Echoes is one of a few Floyd songs to breach the 20-minute mark. Coming in at 23.5 minutes, Echoes completely consumes the second half of Meddle, showcasing Pink Floyd's growing ambition to create epic conceptual works of art. After the Household Objects fiasco, the members of Pink Floyd put down 24 pieces of music with no idea how it would develop. They called this collection Nothing, parts 1 through 24. Echoes was brought to life out of these parts, said Nick Mason, and I quote, "With no new songs, we devised innumerable exercises to try and speed up the process of creating musical ideas. This included playing on separate tracks with no reference to what the rest of us were doing. We may have agreed on a basic chord structure, but the tempo was pretty random." He'd go on to say, "We simply suggested moods like first 2 minutes romantic, next 2 up-tempo. According to John Leckie, the band filled up tapes and tapes of these little ideas. A bit of guitar jiggery, a little pokery, a bit of piano, some sound effects." However, after a couple of weeks of putting down all these little bits, the band was scheduled to hit the road again to start playing gigs. Now, this would be both a blessing and a curse. I mean, touring, it interrupted the band's flow, what they were doing in the studio. But it also allowed them to test their fragmented material live, these songs, see how people liked them. Echoes would evolve out of this back and forth process, said Leckie, and I quote, "When they came back, they got it into shape because they'd been playing it live. Echoes was conceived as one big thing, bits in various sections, so it was recorded that way. Some of these 24 sketches would be reworked and renamed, Son of Nothings, and then Return of the Son of Nothings, and this was before the band eventually settled overall on Echoes." Now, the completed song is comprised of 7 distinct sections. The first beginning was the iconic ping, and that was created by running a piano signal through a Leslie speaker. This note became the sonic signature of the piece. You think about it, it's submarine sonar-like resonance. It invites listeners on a journey, and it serves as a call to wake up. The section, it develops into an improvisation led by Wright's Leslie processed piano, joined by David Gilmour's bluesy clean-tone guitar and Roger Waters on bass and Nick Mason's rhythmic percussion, creating a really lush soundscape. Then comes my favorite part of the song, almost 3 minutes in, the second section introducing the lyrics, with Waters and Gilmour sharing lead vocals and a harmonized and hypnotic delivery. Man, just beautiful. A glimpse of the brilliance to come. Their voices blend seamlessly. Now, commenting on their dynamic, Gilmour said in 2008, and I quote, "The blend of his and my voices and our musical telepathy reached their first major flowering in 1971 on Echoes." Gilmour's guitar solo then follows, transitioning from delicate and emotional to a more distorted rock tone. The third section begins around 7 minutes. Here the song takes on a funky, rhythmic vibe. Mason's drumming shifts, complementing Waters' dynamic bass line and Wright's soulful Hammond organ. Gilmour, he layers 2 rhythm guitar parts before launching into a bold, spacey solo Not to be trying to be the space band, but it's just cool. These elements woven together create a high-energy sequence that sharply contrasts with the introspective sections of the song. Approaching the 11-minute mark, the third section begins giving way to a haunting atmospheric soundscape. Here in this fourth movement, Waters creates eerie sounds using a bottleneck on his bass and echo rec effects. David Gilmour's seagull-like guitar cries were produced by a reverse wah-wah pedal setup and add a unique texture to the piece for sure. This section really showcases Floyd's mastery of experimentation and technical precision that they would perfect on their next album. Coming up on 15 minutes, the fifth part opens with the ethereal tones of Wright's Farfisa organ. And then the ping returns, grounding the atmosphere while Gilmour's muted guitar note sustains through harmonic shifts. The tension builds in a long crescendo as Waters, Mason, and Wright intensify their contributions. Gilmour's soaring guitar motif at 18 minutes and 15 seconds creates a thrilling climax. Then at 19 minutes 12 seconds, the sixth section begins with Gilmour and Wright coming back to their vocals for the final verse. This time with their voices filtered through a Leslie speaker. This sequence concludes with a powerful threefold repetition of the main riff serving as a bridge to the song's closing. Coincidentally, around the 2020 mark, 22nd minute mark, the seventh and final section features a nostalgic exchange between Wright's piano and Gilmour's clear-tone guitar. Synthesized choral-like effects were created through an experimental tape delay technique. This ethereal, otherworldly sound closes Echoes on a reflective note, cementing the 23-minute masterpiece as one of Pink Floyd's most innovative and enduring epics, one of the most enduring epics in rock history. The lyrics of Echoes were written by Roger Waters, and they explore humanity's desire for connection. The song reflects on existential questions about identity, empathy, and our place in the cosmos. Waters uses the metaphor of echoes to symbolize communication, with sound bouncing back and forth representing shared experiences. Waters' lyrics also utilize imagery of nature, with references to oceans, skies, and animals, perhaps suggesting the interconnectedness of all life. He also relies heavily on marine imagery, with references to albatrosses, coral caves, sand, and of course rolling waves. Overhead, the albatross hangs mount. Some interpretations have suggested the Echoes is an exploration of life's beginnings, with Rick Wright's keyboard notes mimicking sonar echoes, symbolizing a journey into the depths of the ocean and the birth of life itself. Living in a flattened shepherd's bush with his future wife Judy, Waters routinely watched commuters filing down Goldhawk Road, appearing like strangers passing in the street. This observation became central to the song's theme of human isolation and the longing to bridge the emotional gaps between people, all of us. In the street, by chance, two separate classes meet. It's in Echoes' closing lines, "So I throw the windows wide and called you across the sky." Those really capture the essence of Waters' message. It's a cry for connection. It's a plea for understanding, and really an acknowledgement of shared human experiences. It's an outpouring of both hope and melancholy, simultaneous yearning for connection and recognition of the barriers that divide us. But no matter how you interpret the song's meaning, there's no denying that Echoes was a landmark track in Pink Floyd's development. And David Gilmour has acknowledged that much. He's confirmed that the band was searching for a greater sense of purpose. They were trying to decide who they were. In fact, David Gilmour would say, and I quote, "We were looking for something. During that whole period through Umaguma and Atom Heart Mother, we were finding ourselves. Echoes was the point of which we found our focus." But Echoes is not only the defining track of Meddle. Gilmour also explained that this progressive rock masterpiece, it laid the groundwork for Pink Floyd's later concept albums. particularly The Dark Side of the Moon, which would follow just months later. Gilmour himself makes a compelling argument that Echoes was a clear forerunner to The Dark Side of the Moon. So for a minute, let's consider some of the similarities. I mean, both Echoes and Dark Side share musical elements that became hallmarks of Pink Floyd's prog rock sound. I mean, for example, both works are built around atmospheric soundscapes, right? Echoes is also structured like a suite, with various movements that range from melodic and peaceful to chaotic and intense. Likewise, each track on Dark Side flowed directly into the next, creating a continuous listening experience. Both also have circular structures. I mean, the ping sound that opens and closes Echoes is a sonic motif that symbolizes continuity. In a similar fashion, Dark Side starts and ends with the sound of a heartbeat, suggesting the cycle of life. And finally, both Echoes and Dark Side are also deeply philosophical, exploring existential questions about human life and our connection. We've already talked about the lyrics of Echoes and its reflection on shared human experiences, or the lack of them. But consider the themes of Dark Side, where the insanity and pressures of the modern world takes a front row seat. For example, Brain Damage, it highlights the mental struggles of those who feel alienated.
The lunatics are in my hall.
There's Us and Them. That explores division and unity in society.
And them.
Both Echoes and Dark Side also muse on the passing of time. You think about it. In Echoes, there's a cosmic, primordial, timeless feel to the song, implying that life is an endless cycle of connection and isolation. Dark Side's time makes a compelling contrast to Echoes, explicitly dealing with the fleeting and limited nature of life, emphasizing the importance of making the most of the time that we have here.
Taking away the moments that make up a dull day.
Echoes not only began the band's journey to this landmark album, The Dark Side of the Moon, and all the albums that will follow, it's, like I said, the forerunner to Dark Side, where the band found their calling, they found their sound. And I can't help but wonder if, Echoes could have been on Dark Side's track list, if it might have been different. If the band had felt the inclination to extend the length of the album. I mean, maybe that's a bold claim, but imagine what The Dark Side of the Moon would sound like with the addition of Echoes. Maybe it could have been an origin track preceding Speak to Me. I don't know. Has anyone out there ever listened to Echoes and The Dark Side of the Moon back to back, though? And what do you think? Could Echoes work as the beginning to The Dark Side of the Moon? Probably overthinking it. In the realm of pop culture, though, Echoes hasn't made all that many media appearances. However, one notable placement happens in the 1973 surfing movie Crystal Voyager. On tour in Australia 2 years earlier, Pink Floyd met director and surfer George Grenier. Crystal Voyager was his documentary film paying tribute to the sport. And legend has it that underwater oceanographer Jacques Cousteau sometimes played Echoes songs during his voyages. Of course, Echoes is also the title of Pink Floyd's 2001 Best Of collection, the compilation that spans the career of Pink Floyd from their first single, Arnold Lane, in 1967 through High Hopes, and the final track from their 1994 studio album, Division Bell. Among the 26 tracks, Echoes appropriately makes an appearance, though it's edited down to 16 and a half minutes. Let's be honest, though, as I've said before, a Pink Floyd Greatest Hits album is about as pointless as a peephole on a glass door. I laughed when I saw that it was coming out. I mean, Pink Floyd is a band you have to listen to album by album. It's an entire album experience. That's just the way it is. There's just one last Echo story that I have to mention. When Pink Floyd played the Pompei Amphitheater in October of '71. This was the month before they released Meddle. The performance was captured as part of a concert film titled Pink Floyd Live at Pompei. But this story actually goes all the way back to August 24th, 79 AD. when Mount Vesuvius erupted, destroying the ancient Roman city of Pompei. It was one of the most catastrophic volcanic events in history, resulting in the ancient Roman city of Pompei being buried under a thick layer of volcanic ash. Thousands of residents were killed instantly, and Pompei remained frozen in time until it was rediscovered in 1748. This is so cool. Almost 2,000 years after the blast, Pink Floyd played Echoes in Pompei's historic amphitheater. The band played to an audience of just the crew and a few curious locals, echoing the emptiness of Pompei and adding chilling new symbolism to the meaning of this song. The documentary was directed by French filmmaker Adrien Mabin. He was inspired by the ghostly setting. He proposed to the band a film that would contrast sharply with traditional rock documentaries. Mabin envisioned Live at Pompei as an anti-Woodstock type film. No cheering crowds, no festival atmosphere. He wanted just Pink Floyd performing to an empty, ancient arena. Said Mabin, and I quote, "Rock films had already become a cliche. What was the point of doing the same kind of film with Pink Floyd? For the film, the band played extended versions of their latest tracks, including Echoes. A 60-minute cut of Live at Pompei premiered at the 1972 Edinburgh Film Festival. The footage offers a glimpse of the post-Barrett, pre-superstar Pink Floyd. Over time, the film would become a cult classic, celebrated for its innovative concept and stripped-down portrayal of Pink Floyd. Man, if you haven't seen it, I recommend checking it out. It's the definition of eerie, which is another day at the office for Pink Floyd, let's be honest. Thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Pink Floyd and Echoes. What do you remember about the song? What are your memories of the album? Let us know in the comments. What do you think? Is this the introduction to all the thematic albums that would finish after? Let's have a great celebration of this. I think it's an incredible track. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe below. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.